Or you can just cut yourself in and read it. According to I-24 News,
Hey, anybody just joining us, we're about to start a live episode, live streaming from America, from Canada, and most importantly from Israel during the elections. I'm going to give a quick intro to who's been our guest, and then MEIR will be on the screen to take it away. This is Never Again Live podcast series. Typically Wednesdays or Sundays is a special issue because it is, as we know, election day in Israel, an important day with a lot of topics to discuss and a lot of stressors for those who are voting. You can stream us live on a variety of sites, including YouTube, Facebook, and most importantly, you can go to our website. It should be streaming live right now. That's israelnow.ca. And after you watch the show, tune in every so often, check up on us. Besides MEIR, who's always our host, we'll have Dr. B in the studio. That's me, by the way. I'm the silent partner, not always that silent. We're going to have Ron East join us a little later, just for a couple of quick comments. He's a local newspaper Zionist guy in Canada as well. Again, this is Election Coverage 2022, Simalcast live from Israel, with live coverage at the Asma Yehudit campaign quarters later, as well as people communicating with us from what's going on minute by minute with the elections. One of our guests, Mordechai KEDAR, is an Israeli scholar of Arab culture. He's a professor at Bar Ilan University, and he has 25 years experience as an IDF military intelligence. We've had Mordechai on before. We always look forward to his comments and commentary. Also joining us will be MEIR JOLOVITZ, a Middle East analyst, past director of Zionist Organization America, as well as a past chairman of the Jewish Defense League. ABELOW will join us, the Israel social media activist. He's the CEO of 12 Tribe Films, as well as the founder of the Pulse of Israel and Israel Unwired. Please tune in and find them if you haven't already. The great Zionist, pro-Israel sites. The world is a dangerous place, not because of those who do evil, but because of those who simply look on and do nothing. Here at IsraelNow.ca, we're active, we're proactive. Please join us, IsraelNow.ca. Without any further ado, I'm going to introduce MEIR Halevi Weinstein. MEIR, take it away. MEIR, you have no sound. MEIR, you have no sound. There you go. Now you do.
Good afternoon, if you're in Eastern Standard Time. Good evening to whoever is in Israel right now. These are exciting times. The elections going on. Our Ben Gavur is riding high in the polls. There's a lot we're going to be discussing today. We have great guests that are going to join us to give perspective on how crucial this election is, what the issues are, what the security issues are, what the economy issues are, exactly what is going on in Israel right now. I have Alan Skorsky, who's going to be joining me, asking questions. I'll be asking questions. Alan Skorsky will be asking questions to the various guests that we have on. So right now, I just want to say thank you, Alan, for joining us. It's going to be great working with you on this platform today. And our first guest who's going to be with us is MEIR JOLOVITZ. MEIR, are you there? Can you hear us?
I am. It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
MEIR, it's great to see you. MEIR, these are historic times. I got a feeling of deja vu when Rabbi Meir Kahane was running and he got a seat. And you know, in the next election, they were projecting that he was going to be the third largest party in Israel. And then the left and the right, they worked together to throw him the Knesset, deplatform him. And right now, we're seeing the rise of Itamar Ben-Gvir, that there is massive support. I have a feeling of vindication of our rabbi for what he stood for. What are your thoughts as we head into this election right now?
When you mention the rabbi, you make reference to the fact that he was elected in 1984 with one seat, which the threshold was different then. Today, the threshold is 3.25%. In 1988, when he was running for re-election, he was banned for various reasons, every one of which should technically ban the Arab parties that are extant today. In 1988, the Likud party, it was then Prime Minister Shamir, worked actively to get the rabbi banned because they viewed his ascension in power as to their, it was at their expense. Ironic, and it'll be discussed perhaps later, was the fact that things are different this time. With Itamar Ben-Gvir coming into prominence, the Likud party needs him in order for them to establish the 61 or more seats for governance. So in that sense, it's revolutionary already.
It's unbelievable. Alan, put Alan Skorsky on with us so he could as well ask Mayor the issues of the day.
It's great to see you, and we're not jealous that you're living in Arizona and we're here in the colder temperatures. Question for you, just an observation. Previous elections, it was not uncommon for Israeli candidates to visit with the U.S. 30 days before an election. We remember very well Bill Clinton having Shimon Peres as a non-endorsement endorsement. Only this time, in this election, we didn't see Yair Lapid coming to Washington to meet with Biden. You didn't see any type of back and forth across endorsements. Why do you suppose that this time neither leader is using the other to increase their bona fides with voters from each country?
That's a good question. Actually, Lapid did meet with American officials. First of all, a couple of months ago, when Biden himself came to Israel, Lapid, Benny Gantz, and those who represented the present coalition government, that which is now having fallen apart, which is the reason we have elections, they did meet, and they met also with Secretary of State Blinken. Just recently, once again, they met with Blinken. It was a love fest, and the reason they did that is because the Americans are indeed concerned that the Israeli government is going to shift once again to the right, and therefore it was necessary for the Americans to give this oblique endorsement of the government. What was ironic and what was not discussed enough was at the same time that Biden came to Israel to meet with officials and for the photo ops, which would benefit both the Israelis, we were told, and nonetheless also the Democrats who wanted to prove in anticipation of what was going to be a disastrous midterm election, that the Democrats needed the photo op with the Israeli politicians as well. What was not spoken about enough was the fact that during his mission in Israel, for political points, Biden also met with Mahmoud Abbas, known in Israel as Abu Mazen, the head of the Palestinian Authority. And standing side by side, Abu Mazen, Mahmoud Abbas, said something which should have absolutely derailed any nonsensical and fraudulent hopes for a peace process. He stood there and he basically said that he wanted the Americans to help the Palestinians through the United Nations and other vehicles to right the wrong of 74 years of occupation. One doesn't need to have a calculator to understand that the head of the Palestinian Arab movement, its population, was basically telling the world and Biden that Israel's occupation is 74 years old, which of course takes us to 1948. Those people who think that Israel should somehow offer more concessions in order to get the Arabs to be a little more conciliatory have always spoken about the occupation of 1967. And indeed, Abbas was quite clear quite candid and perhaps made a mistake, but it was not one that was played effectively by those supporters of Israel. He admitted that the Arabs view Israel's very presence, its very existence, as an occupation. And there it is. There it is. We have a bridge too far. This is an unbridgeable gap between two antagonists. The perpetrator, of course, are the Arabs who commit all the terrorism and such, and the Israelis who were blamed for defending themselves. It's the situation. It's always been the situation.
So, Mayor, let me jump in. So, when you mentioned, some of the security issues going on in the so-called occupation, when I was in Israel for 4 months, I came back to Canada, and I'm going back to Israel in about 2 or 3 weeks, something like that. So, what I witnessed was an upsurge of terrorism. There were unbelievable terrorist attacks. There was in Beersheba, there was in Tel Aviv, there was in Elad, there was in Hadera. And after these terrorist attacks, there were celebrations in Arab towns in the territories. And there were Hamas rallies happening during they call it the holy month of Ramadan. Hamas rallies on Har HaBayit, on our Temple Mount, where they're the Hamas flag and they're calling for the death of Jews. With this backdrop, and also let me mention that on campuses, Tel Aviv and Beersheba, other campuses, there were PLO flags being waved at rallies. So Itamar Ben-Gvir is high in the polls, and he says he had a news conference. He says he wants to be Minister of Internal Security. What are we supposed to expect if he does exceedingly well in the election, and if he does get a position like that, what would he do?
Well, the question is, will he actually be given the opportunity to do it? If we are to be blunt, and I guess on this program we are always blunt, too many times in the past, certainly more often than not, we've seen a situation where the right wing has voted for Likud with the thinking that the Likud really represents the right rather than just sort of leaning right. And the mistake is made because Bibi Netanyahu, time and again, has basically betrayed the votes that came his way. We've often spoken about the fact that Naftali Bennett, J.Ca, and Gideon Sa'ar, all those who received right-wing votes have betrayed the right. In fact, in the last election, there were 731,000 votes cast for parties which campaigned as right-wing, the political proclivity. That's 731,000 votes out of 4.4 million. And of course, they betrayed the population. It is not completely out of the question, depending what the numbers are. And I do want to mention the numbers. I'm here for a short period. I do have another engagement, and the analytics are absolutely important in order to be able to understand Israel. But it's not completely out of the question for us to find out in the coming days or weeks that Bibi Netanyahu, depending what those numbers are, has decided to go rather with a larger government and bring in someone like Benny Gantz. We cannot assume for the moment that that might not happen. If it doesn't happen, to answer your question, and in fact, Bibi needs that 61 plus votes, and Itamar Ben-Gvir and also Smotrich, part of that that union, they all of a sudden will have their powers absolutely magnified. Whereas 2, 3, and 4 elections ago, and we're only talking about 4 years ago, 2, 3, and 4 elections ago, there were a number of people in Israel who were reluctant to vote for the extreme right for fear that it would be a wasted vote. Today, it's quite the opposite. 2 months ago, had someone told us, we as supporters of that particular political ideology, that Ben-Gvir was going to get 11 seats, we were told that. We were euphoric. And then 12, and then 13, and then 14. You mentioned terrorism. There's a direct link to the security situation in Israel and the shift towards the right, because the Israeli people have come to understand that the government isn't providing them with the protection, the social contract that governments are supposed to. You mentioned Rabbi Kahana. I'll tell you something that he said. We all know this many, well, in fact, decades ago. He basically said when he was running for office, and at the time in 1988, He was polling at, according to two Israeli papers, Idiot Achronot and Ma'ariv, he was polling at 11 and 12 seats, which showed this before he was barred, which showed that he was going to, in fact, be the third largest party in Israel. And they barred him. And the Likud government was instrumental in getting him barred. The comment that he made at the time is still relevant today. He said at the time, you have to decide, you Israel as a people, you'll either have Kahana or Arafat in the Knesset. Well, today we do have Arafat in the Knesset, and we have for a long time in the form of the Arab parties. Allow me just to give some analytical numbers. They're really important. I realize my time is short. One cannot understand Israeli politics without understanding the numbers. There was a significant survey, major survey, which was conducted, which compared political proclivities of the Israeli voter, Jewish voter, from April 2019, 4 elections ago, to August of 2022, 2 months ago. And this is what the survey showed, that those people who identified themselves as either right-wing or leaning right increased from self-identified, increased from 46% to 62%, a remarkable increase. Those people who were considered or considered themselves to be in the political center, they went down from 33% to 24%, a 9% drop. And those people who fashioned themselves to be strong leftists or leaning left ideologists, they went down from 17 to 11%. What does that say? What's the translation here? The numbers favor the right wing in Israel by a large margin. In fact, one can very much, empirically, of the 120 seats in the Knesset, 70 seats actually represent the right-wing party in Israel, or those leaning right, right of center. And yet, we have been speaking about for the last year and a half a government that is fighting to establish a majority of 1 with 61. Why? Because of betrayal. We've had Gideon Sar bold, we had Naftali Bennett and Ayala Chaket bold. We have these people, Victor Lieberman, his votes, the Russian votes and everything else, these are people who identify themselves as right-wingers politically, ideologically. And yet these are people, and it comes down to one thing. In Israel, it's same as in America with Trump. For Bibi, against Bibi. For Bibi, against Bibi. But there's a new element at play. And that new element at play is, as you mentioned, Itamar Ben-Gvir. All of a sudden, the person who they weren't sure was going to pass the threshold a number of years ago has scored significant gains, enough that he has become a player in Israel, a tremendous player. Allow me just one other analytic, which is important. There are 2 elements which anyone who's an observer of Middle East affairs or Israeli election affairs has to understand this. There are 2 significant elements which determine the way that Israel will go. The most important 2. The one is the voter turnout. And today, and I'm sure the other guests will speak to it, the voter turnout is significant to deciding who, in fact, will prevail in the election. And the other is which of the small parties will actually be able to pass that threshold. For the audience that doesn't know how the threshold has changed, the threshold used to be 1%. It then changed, the threshold then changed to 1.5%. It changed to 2%. And since 2014, it's 3.25%, which means that the minimum that a party can be elected to in Israel is 4 seats. There is no party that can be elected with 1, 2, or 3 seats anymore. And if one looks at the numbers, and the numbers are really telling, it's remarkable as far as the voter turnout. If you look at Israel's first 7 elections, from 1949 until 1969, in that case, every single one of the election had a turnout in the 80%, as high as 86.2% in the first. So those first 7 elections, the population of Israel came out in large numbers and voted. In the next 8 elections for the Knesset prime minister, that number dropped into the 70s. In most cases, the high 70s. And then all of a sudden, for the last 9 elections, since 1999, the last 9 elections, that number has been, with 2 exceptions, in the 60s. Those two exceptions were in 2020 and 2015, in which we had 71 and 72%. So the fact that the numbers are coming in today as we do this broadcast, and I won't be with you, unfortunately, when the exit polls actually come in, but that suggests that there's a switch and a move back to a larger participation, which should favor our camp.
Quick question before Alan jumps in. I know Alan has a great question, but just a quick follow-up to what you just said. The GDP of Israel, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, was very low, and everybody was working hard to improve the economy in Israel. And I can imagine the kind of pressure from the United States on Israel when American, what they call assistance to Israel, represented possibly over 10% of the GDP that Israel had. Today, the whatever assistance or cooperative deals that the United States has with Israel, it's less than 1% of the GDP. The GDP is over $500 billion right now in Israel and climbing. And with the discovery of natural gas and the tech and everything else going on with Israel and their economy, estimates are it's going to surpass over $1 trillion not so soon, in the very near future. With that said, the United States, the government, already was making statements that they're very concerned about Itamar Ben-Gvir and if Benjamin Netanyahu would take him in as a partner in a coalition government. Israel immune to the pressure now from the United States?
Wonderful question. And it's remarkable because when we talk about the present coalition government, that which is falling apart, that which has already fallen apart, Naftali Benny Gantz actually made a promise to the Biden administration that there'd be no surprises. In essence, that we'll fall in line. Be nice to us because we're going to be subservient to you. The reality is that Israel's been subservient to the American pressures that you mentioned, and for the very reasons that you mentioned. In 1975, Gerald Ford put in play a plan which was labeled, the name of it was a reassessment of American foreign policy in the Middle East. And he put pressure on Israel. In 1975, when that pressure was placed against Israel, and mind you, that was a short time after the Yom Kippur War, when he put that pressure on March of 1975, and it lasted until September of 1975, Israel was receiving $2.58 billion from the United States, and as you mentioned, from its GDP at the time of $12.3 billion. So the American impact on Israel was significant. Whereas today, Israel receives $3.8 billion, slightly more, of course, and Israel's GDP, as you mentioned, notwithstanding the fact that it had gone down during Corona, is up and is supposed to hit $522 billion by the end of this year. What's the translation here? Israel has every ability and every right to tell the United States, we will not endanger our nation with the Iranians building a bomb, with the Palestinian Arabs telling us that they will never recognize the Jewish state, with the Palestinian Arabs telling us that when a two-state solution is implemented as a first step, that Arab state of Palestine, which will sit in Israel's border, will be Judenrein, no Jews. Nonetheless, Israel capitulates, and especially this leftist government has capitulated to America. Israel needs to learn the lesson of some of the other countries in the world, and that is the more often they tell the United States to go to hell, the more accommodating the Americans seem to be. Israel has not learned that lesson, and if you're asking me if Israel will ever learn that lesson, I don't think they will, because we, as some famous rabbi once said, you can take the Jews out of the galut, out of the exile, but you can't take the galut out of the Jews.
Right. Well put. Alan, go right ahead.
Mayor, during the Obama administration, people like Peter Beinart would encourage them to punish Israel and we'll give you cover. Towards Obama's the end of his term, J Street told him to abandon Israel at the UN and we'll give you cover. At that time, the only boogeyman was Bibi Netanyahu. If indeed this becomes a coalition that brings in Gvir and Smotrich, what do you expect the Jewish left to respond, since until now, in my opinion, they have been one of the greatest, most dangerous sources of fomenting anti-Semitism in America and creating more polarization between the U.S. and Israeli government. If Bibi wins, God willing, and he brings in right-wing coalitions, what do you believe now happens to the Jewish left in America?
That's wonderful. I know you're an expert in this field, and the audience should be reminded, perhaps they know already, automatically, the American Jewish population, the American Jews are 1.8% of the American population. Because they vote in higher numbers than most other populations, their influence in elections is just a little over 2%, a little above their numbers. And yet, the Democratic National Committee has actually admitted that over 50%, one study said 60% of the dollars in its coffers are actually donations made by the American Jewish community. The American Jewish community, as long as the politician has a D, Democrat, next to its name, will vote Democrat. The Democrats have taken advantage of it, tremendous advantage of it. And prior to Trump, the Republicans, knowing that the Democrats were always going to get the Jewish votes, the Republicans sort of ignored the Jews because, well, we're not going to get their votes anyhow. And it was a tragic thing to happen. How is that going to change if Bibi comes into power again? Well, it's going to change only minimally, and I'll tell you why. First of all, we have that walking vegetable still sitting at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington. And for those people who blame Joe Biden, and I do, Joe Biden isn't the big problem. Joe Biden is a puppet. It's his puppeteers, the masters. We're talking about Ron Klain. We're talking about Jake Sullivan. We're talking about Anthony Blinken. We're talking about behind the scenes John Kerry, Susan Rice, Avril Haines, and all these people. The American foreign policy team is decidedly anti-Israel. Decidedly anti-Israel, and specifically on two major issues, and they're the two most important issues that Israel faces. One is the advanced development of an Iranian nuclear bomb. They are all pro-nuke deal. They're all pro-Iran. And the second is the establishment of a two-state delusion. They're both, so the problem that Israel has is the whole democratic apparatus. The question he asked is a wonderful one, and it needs to be pointed out that until this government, American government, until this administration was in place, J Street was basically neglected by the American government. It was AIPAC. AIPAC was the major player. And with Biden and his team, we've seen J Street elevated to a position of power that they don't deserve. And as long as Biden is going to be president for the next 2 years, and he will, or he'll be replaced by that other vegetable, we have a problem. Bibi Netanyahu can only do so much, given the fact that the American administration will not be pro-Israel while Bibi Netanyahu is prime minister. And here's the caveat. Congress, with the midterm elections coming in November 6th, in November 8th, the caveat is that we will once again have a Republican Congress. And historically, we all know Congress has been Israel's best friend, historically. Now, there's been a shift tragically away from it, and that shift has actually been orchestrated by the left, which has capitulated to the extreme left. So as long as we have a strong Republican support for Israel, and even perhaps a Senate that goes to the Republicans, Israel can at least tread water until Biden is removed as president, or the Democrats are removed as president of the United States. Israel will still not have an easy task because the president of the United States basically dictates foreign policy.
Follow up, Alan.
Oh, okay. So going back, because I agree with you about as far as Biden being the puppeteer. And now with the rise,
the puppet.
Right, he's a puppet. Obama is the puppeteer, as
Yeah.
well as the staff goes. Now, you have in Congress, we had the last few election cycles, the rise of the progressives, and they would threaten any Democrat who didn't go their way to primary them. This election cycle, we're seeing less of that. So now I'm kind of asking you to kind of look into your crystal ball. To me, the left never goes away. they lose, but they never forfeit. They always come back. Now, the question is, we know
Right.
in the primaries in Minnesota that Ilhan Omar won by a very small margin. We don't know what's going to happen to AOC here, but now, do you see the left here being more tempered if the Republicans come in and squash the Democrats? Because there are all kinds of predictions if it'll be a wave, a big wave, a large wave, whatever you want to call it. What does this do to the progressives in Congress? And in this case also, does it make the Republican Congress even stronger?
Very good. In the game of logic, we have premise and conclusion, or several premises and a conclusion. In this particular case, I'm not as optimistic as I would normally want to be. And there's a good reason, and you certainly alluded to it. The Democrats, the liberals, the leftists are absolutely steadfast in their ideological commitment to the things that they believe in, whether it be climate change or pressuring Israel, that the occupation, that fraudulent word, that the occupation is the reason. It isn't because if one was to give a speech in the Middle East, you could do it in one sentence. The core of the problem in the Middle East is the Palestinian Arab refusal to recognize Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state, period. That's the end of the lecture. Questions, please. The Democrats are absolutely steadfast, determined in the ideological, and they don't yield. And tragically, the Republican Party, which has been quite accommodating of Israel, certainly during the Trump years, they are pro-Israel. If there's a pro-Israel political party in America, it's the Republicans. It's not the Democrats. And yet, the Republicans they're wishy-washy. They just the Democrats put the Republicans on trial. The Republicans respond by saying, "We're better than you. We wouldn't do that to you." And that's the reason the Democrats score. Theodore Roosevelt once referred to his adversary, William McKinley, he said he's got the backbone of a chocolate eclair. Well, the Democrats actually see most of the Republicans as having a backbone of the chocolate eclair, and they exploit it. The exceptions to that having a backbone of a chocolate eclair are the ones that they target and vilify, which are people like Ted Cruz. I'm just using him as an example. The stronger the person is in standing up for the American rights, for exceptionalism, for pro-Israel support, the more they become the target of the Democrats. The Democrats don't have to attack the Mitt Romneys and the others, the rhinos, because, well, they aren't a problem. And so the issue you raise is a wonderful one, and it's terribly concerning, because I don't see the Republicans, even when they score a large victory, they're not going to have impeachments. They're not going to do these things. And the Democrats exploit it. They exploit it. The Democrats also, yes, they do. They cheat. They cheat. And it's very difficult. As someone who plays tennis, where there's no referee and the other side is cheating, how often you might win the game how often you'll lose a game that you otherwise want to win. Allow me, because my clock is ticking, I want to throw in, it's very important just for the discussion that will follow my departure today.
Yep.
It's really important that people understand the numbers game in Israel. This is going to illustrate why we're sitting here. I've been listening to the radio since last night when the polls opened up in Israel, even though there's no definitive information coming in. I just want to share an example, a case study that'll show you how significant the vote in Israel can be in an election. Now, we know in the last 43 months, there have been 5 elections. There's 6.78 million Israelis who are eligible to vote. Based on the numbers that are coming in, if 70%, 71, 72, 73%, it means there'll be 5 million votes cast. And the more votes that are cast, theoretically, it strengthens our camp. But I want to take an example of how everything can implode. Everything can implode on a few votes. So I did all the analytics this morning. We've heard some of them before, but I went into specifics. This will take a minute and a half to 2 minutes, and it'll illustrate why one has to be really on guard, okay? I'm talking about the election of April 2019, which is the first of these, today the 5th, the first of these 5 elections. In April of 2019, it was obviously undecided. We had a party, which we all know at the time, the Israeli parties changed their names so often, the smaller parties. It was Yamin HaChadash, the New Right. And the New Right, as far as its principal players, had Naftali Bennett, had Ayelet Shaked, and also, even though she wasn't considered a strong political person as far as the vote getting, that's when Caroline Glick actually joined that endeavor. So in 2019, 43 months ago, we had a party that runs representing the extreme right, as the pundits or the media called them, and they pulled in, mind you, the threshold is 3.25%. They pulled in 3.22%. They fell, I did the math exactly, they fell 1,453, I'm sorry, there were millions of votes cast. There were millions of votes cast. They fell 1,453 votes short and weren't elected, which meant that there were 4 seats that were lost. 4 seats. At the same time, and this juxtaposition is absolutely important, there were 2 Arab parties that ran. They were both elected. The one party was Hadash, okay, which was Ayman Odeh. What they did is, I'm looking at the numbers, they got 6 seats. They pulled in 193,000 votes. They got 6 seats. They had 4.49%. And here comes the other pivotal number. The other one was Mansour Abbas. Mansour Abbas, representing the United Arab List, comes in with, mind you, the threshold is 3.25, comes in with 3.33%. They passed the threshold by 3,615 votes. So out of 4.5 million votes cast, the fact that the right wing was 1,400 votes short, and the fact that the Arab Party, there would have only been one Arab Party that passed the threshold, was 3,600 plus. We had 4 less seats for the right, 4 more seats for the. So just imagine how those 4,500 votes, those 6,000 votes, changed our future and our destiny. And I'm just going to remind you as the last word.
Right.
I'm just going to remind you as the last word. The fact that Yitzhak Rabin was elected in '92 is the reason we had Oslo. Okay, no one, when he ran, he didn't run, I'm giving you Oslo. But it came. When Ariel Sharon ran in 2001 and again 2003, he didn't say, I'm going to disengage unilaterally from Gaza. That wasn't his platform. And he did. So there are 2 examples in Israel where politicians running in one direction, they win, and all of a sudden there is a disaster in Israel. And we need to be very, very careful in the false optimism that just because our camp won, I'm not talking about Itamar Ben-Gvir, I'm talking about the right of center. And I'm going to say what I said in the radio show before, on this podcast before, and I will probably have to use that as my reason to dismiss myself, because I do have another engagement. Israel is a country, perhaps not like other countries, we see it elsewhere, where political prostitution is rife. And the people who suffer, the people who suffer political prostitution, obviously are the people who are truly, truly ideologically committed. And that's our camp. Anyhow, I appreciate the opportunity. The guests who are going to follow later, I realize the polls are going to close, or the polls close very soon in Israel, in less than 15 minutes. The exit polls are going to be there, and I will tune in and listen to you guys on podcast later. I thank you for the opportunity.
Meir, thank you very much for joining us.
Meir, thank you. Alan, Abe, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Good seeing you.
Thank you.
Great, and hopefully you're here tonight.
Yeah, and there it is. There's Pogo. There's Pogo, 1953.
Yes.
We have met the enemy, and he is us. As Gary knows, it would not be a proper podcast that I appear on if that isn't said. Thank you very much, and the best to everybody.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All the best. Alan,
Great guest, Mayor.
there's already about 70% of the votes in right now. There's like 15 minutes to go before they close. It's pretty exciting. We have someone who at the Otzmot Yehudit headquarters right now filming for us. Maybe we could connect with him and he could show us the activity, what's going on. And then shortly after, Mordechai KEDAR will connect with us and will join us. And we could ask him to analyze what's going on as we get closer to the wire.
Hey, you guys hear
There's Jordan. Jordan, show us what's going on there.
me? Okay, let me switch
Yes, we
my
can hear you.
camera. One moment.
Yeah, we want to see what's going on there.
There we go. I have a huge kick because I'm so excited to be here. Media is setting up. We haven't really started like any speeches, but they really went out of their way. We're at the Vert Hotel in Jerusalem to put on this amazing event. The biggest kick. I'm so privileged to be here right now.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the stage. I think they're going to
People,
start, and after the polls come in. What are you hearing
we
from
can take
them
a
right
look
now? When are they going to
outside.
set up? When are they going to start?
I don't know.
Okay, so they're just getting started. So
yeah.
let me see if I got an email or message from Mordechai KEDAR. Let's just see what's going on there. No, he'll join us
People probably
soon.
on live TV right now.
Jordan, what's the mood now?
The mood there, excited. Everyone's super nice. And they really had to pull strings to let me in. So that was I don't know. Mood's good. Yeah, and same thing in Jerusalem. I live in Tel Aviv, and I took a train down here to Jerusalem. The trains were passing people with their Israel flags walking down the streets and flags putting it on the train from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. It was packed. It's really an amazing day. And I'm privileged to be here. I'm privileged to have to learn Hebrew. I'm privileged to be living in the Zionist of 2,000 years. Have a say in the next election. People.
It's going to be amazing as everybody starts coming there. We want to see that.
Yeah. So we got to see.
So maybe we'll show a. Do we have any? Gary, are you hearing anything? Any reports coming in right now of
Yeah.
numbers or anything?
No.
Pretty much just what you've already covered, the fact that what's coming in. I have I-24 news going in the background. They're just over 70% of votes are in. A lot bigger voter turnout than expected or than seemed to be the case in the polls for both sides of the equation. So on the one hand, it's good that more of us turned out. On the other hand, so did the other side.
Right. Okay. Okay, so maybe we could show a quick video while we're waiting for our other guests to join us of some of the recent terrorism that's been going on. So, you know, really why people are turning out so much, because this is such an important issue.
Let me find one.
And I'd really like to be there right now in Jerusalem there.
No.
Looks like they're doing live interviews on live TV.
It's great.
Canada. Canada. Yeah. That seems important.
Who are you speaking with?
No, just some guy came up to me and asked me.
Okay.
I don't. Yeah, I don't have a GPO card. I'm the old media here, so I'm trying not to get caught.
Okay, we're going to show a quick video. Couple little short
Whoever's
ones right
paying
now.
attention to this, whoever's watching, it's not to be taken comically. There's some satire involved. If it offends anybody, sorry about that. I don't think it will, based on our audience. But let's just talk a little bit about the concept of security in Israel from the perspective of Dr. V. As you know, this is the title of this little 4-minute talk is Vigilance and Karma. Because we need both in Israel. We need vigilance from the people, from the military, from the police, as well as there's nothing like a little good karma. Speaking of good karma, we got Clint Eastwood next to the past Israel Consul General saying to him, I'm a big supporter of Israel.
Go ahead. Make my day.
And I'm glad he is on our side. He's not the only one on our side. There goes Chucky. This is how you deal with terrorists.
I watched Prime Minister Netanyahu's speech before Congress and saw a man who loves his country with all his heart and soul. I ask you to vote for Prime Minister Netanyahu on Election Day.
Or else. Poor guy, looks kind of like he's had a bad day. Uh-oh, he's still armed and dangerous. Moving right along to a little more serious.
We've been looking forward to this.
Thanks for all the support.
Believe me, you'll always have my support. You know, and, yeah.
Now, speaking of instant karma, we talked about vigilance, like Chuck. This is called instant karma. But you make the best out of the best you can. It's like when you have lemons, make lemonade. You have a barbecue, you get some marshmallows. And this is instant karma with a C, not to be confused with karma with a K. Oops. Now what do we do? We already roasted the marshmallows. I got an idea. How about some wieners? Classic, kosher classics, of course. On a serious note, the terrorist who opened fire via Kiryat Arba shows more instant karma because it was a security guard and an off-duty soldier who used their car, and thus the instant karma. Oops. Squash terrorist. Let's have another view.
הנה, עכשיו הוא דורס אותו.
That's gotta hurt.
עכשיו הוא פורק. זה החייל?
כן, הוא עושה עליו עידוד.
מי זה? חייל של מאיפה?
Oops, no more terrorist. But he messed up the store pretty good, so I heard it's for sale now. You could buy it cheap. It's a fixer-upper. Then a serious note, the terrorist who murdered Noah Laser, an 18-year-old IDF woman. Mayor, back to you.
Okay, very good. Well, right now there's just saw something like 75% of the votes in right now, and they're closing just in a few minutes. What's it say? They're closing in 2 minutes. Very exciting. We'll see what happens. We're anticipating some very good news from the right camp, and please God, everything works out properly. Like I said earlier, when I was in Israel, spent almost 4 months there. You know, there was an upsurge in terrorism, and it was unbelievable. And this was under the watch of the Bennett coalition government. You know, we talk about issues. I'm involved with various groups that are promoting Jewish prayer on Har Bayit, and they're talking about, you know, there should be at least equal rights. That you know, if Muslims are allowed to pray up there, you know, why shouldn't Jews be allowed to pray up there? And you know, it makes sense. It does make sense. However, I don't consider those who are burning Israeli flags, waving Hamas flags, calling for the murder of Jews, mass rallies up there by Hamas supporters on our Temple Mount. I don't consider their actions to be anything remotely close to prayer. Therefore, it's not even an issue of equal right. We need a government in Israel that's going to make sure and implement Israeli law that exists, even laws exist, to get that incitement off our Temple Mount. And then what will follow from that, definitely do the right way. It should not be much of an issue at that point. The longer a government in Israel allows this incitement to take place on our Temple Mount, minimizes the opportunity and the restrictions that are imposed on the Jews that go up there. Just simply walking up on the Temple Mount, they are harassed, and that's allowed to continue. That should stop. And hopefully, and we're praying that Itamar Ben-Gvir will get a high position, will have a lot of support from this election, and be able to implement laws that already exist or strengthen laws that exist in Israel, and see this desecration is not allowed to take place on the Temple Mount, starting there, and certainly in other places in Israel as well. It's just absurd that on our holiest place in the entire world, and Israel has sovereignty, and it's the Jewish state, and it's controlled by Israel and the Jewish people, it doesn't make any sense that the government of Israel would allow these Hamas rallies to continue and celebrate the murder of Jews. Alan, what's your comment on that?
Well, you know what? It's funny. It's the same question that you mentioned, Mayor. Jordan, they have sovereignty over the mosque there. And you wonder, this is the heart of Jerusalem. When Jews go up to the Temple Mount, and you know, because you've been there, if you wear a yarmulke, you cannot walk around without an Israeli escort. You either have to wear a baseball cap, as I did when I went last year, or as your picture showed, Ben Shapiro was wearing a baseball cap. That's the only way that you're allowed to walk on those grounds. Furthermore, when you walk towards the big dome, there is an Arab guard there, and he says only Muslims are allowed. And when someone says I'm Muslim, he speaks to them in Arabic just to make sure that he's not someone trying to sneak in. So they protect their sites, and they will chase you, and they will incite violence against you. And the Israeli, and again, something I never understood, there are certain parts of the IDF where you mess with them and they will mess with you back. For some reason on the Temple Mount, the Israeli police are they're neutered. They are handcuffed, that any Jew who goes up there, they're now the perpetrator for violating what they are considering to be Arab sovereignty. It's a problem that has never gone away and never mattered who the Israeli government is. Labor, Likud, right, left, center, no one has ever addressed this issue before.
Right. I'm hearing right now, I'm getting some messages that right now, the rate has 62. I mean, these are not, they're certainly not final numbers right now, but that's very interesting right now. We're waiting for Mordechai KEDAR to join us. We're waiting for ABELOW to join us. Any moment now. Just got another message. Yeah, that's what they're showing. Con News says there's 62 to the right. And
Hey, Mayor, we
50
got
left.
Avi on whenever you're ready.
Okay,
We got Avi.
let's have him on. This will be exciting. Same thing? Okay.
Shalom,
Avi,
shalom.
how are you doing tonight? Shalom. Great to see you.
Baruch
Listen,
Hashem, very
I'll be
well,
back
Mayor.
in
How are
Israel in
you?
about 2 to 3 weeks. I'll be back in Israel about 2 to 3 weeks, but it's great to have you on the show right now. And I'm sure you are on fire right now with what's going on because it seems like our camp is doing extremely well. How you feel?
Well, let's put it this way, Mayor. From experience, we know that whatever the numbers are now are not necessarily the numbers we're going to wake up in the morning. So I wouldn't necessarily get too excited or too depressed based on whatever numbers are starting to come in over the next few hours. It's all very close, according to the official exit polls that have just been released right this moment. The different exit polls have either the right-wing bloc at 61 or 62, which sounds very promising. But again, they're still in the middle of counting. There's still the double enveloped votes that have to be counted that take a few days. So it is very hard to be able to go to here in Israel to go to sleep tonight either happy or depressed. So
Right.
that's the state we're in right now. It's very, very close. You're talking about thin margins here.
Yeah, we are. We are. Alan, go ahead. Ask Avi. You got something
Avi,
on your mind?
you follow American politics, and you know that there's a Senate race in Pennsylvania where there is this 7-foot freak show with tattoos who calls himself John Fetterman. He had a stroke. Godspeed, Refuah Shlema. This was a while ago. He's had a stroke, and it shows in the debates he cannot speak properly.
Oh,
And
okay.
yet,
In the past, he had a stroke. Okay.
right. Yet the media in America, many of the media say he's fine. People have been worse. So my question is this: we know that the media in Israel also has very left leanings. How have they covered? You know, the last coalition, they had the Arab list in there. Has the Israeli media tried to prop them up to help them become relevant for this coalition? Or how much have they been active in trying to elevate them while taking down Ben Gvir, and his party?
Alan, very, very good question. I actually spoke about this specific issue with Caroline Glick in my program with her yesterday. And basically, I'll give you the exact example that answers your question and then go deeper into the bigger picture. The Israeli media, as well as the Jewish Israel media in English, have totally put the focus on delegitimizing the right-wing list of Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir. All of the news, all of the press, whether it is the news items or what is the editorial items, or whether every news item nowadays is an editorial item, has been bashing them about how dangerous they are to Israeli democracy, etc., 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 that they are terror supporters. They didn't have to deal with trying to whitewash the Arab lists. They were mum about the Arab lists. No news whatsoever, no editorials whatsoever about the potential problem or real problem of having Arab lists that are parties that basically support publicly the end of the Jewish state of Israel. To that, there was no news whatsoever, and all the news, all the editorials was all focused on trying to delegitimize the right-wing list of the religious Zionist list of Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir. And this is just one taste of the bigger issue, and that is how basically the media has basically, using Caroline Glick's own quote, the media is the left's attack dog. There is no objectivity whatsoever in the establishment media. They are part of the campaign of the left, whether it's the left in the American politics, whether it is the left in Israeli politics. And you could say that for the right-wing parties to get 61 votes, as of right this moment, again, it'll change, whether for better or for worse over the next few days. We don't know. But it's miraculous. Just that it's miraculous, because it shows you that half of the population, or half of the Jewish population mostly, are not being brainwashed by the media, which is basically serving hook, line, and sinker the agenda of the left. That's the story in a nutshell. So it is very, very sad, because I personally know many right-wingers who did not vote for right-wing parties, because they've basically been brainwashed to believe that, no, voting for Yair Lapid or voting for Benny Gantz is the same as voting for Bibi Netanyahu, and Bibi is corrupt, because that's what they've been told for 30 years, and their court cases right now, even though they're all falling apart, but the press isn't talking about how they're falling apart. They just automatically call him corrupt because he's on trial after a 30-year witch hunt, which they finally have court cases against him. So I know plenty of right-wingers, settlers, fellow settlers, who our lives are currently being harmed, and our lives will be harmed if Lapid is prime minister and Gantz is defense minister. Their policies are quite clear, supporting the establishment of a terror state called Palestine under Defense Minister Gantz. The illegal building of Arab building in Area C has jumped 80% from before he was defense minister. They're surrounding our communities. Someone in Efrat, a friend of mine, his home was actually shot upon from one of the illegal buildings built very close outside of our community of Efrat. They are suffocating Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria. And even with this reality, I know plenty of right-wingers and right-wing settlers who have been brainwashed by the media, because they still read the Jerusalem Post and they still read Times of Israel, and they do not read it with a critical eye. And they have basically been brainwashed to think that, oh, it's okay to vote for Lapid and or Gantz. So the media is so dangerous. And they're the attack dog of the left. That is the story. And it's a miracle that we're able to get the votes we get.
It's incredible. Avi, I just read a report that said it's a projection for Otzma Yehudit to have 16 seats. Now that's not final. But with what you said, with the situation in the, I don't call them settlements, but over the so-called green line.
The Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria.
Exactly, that's the term. And with Lapid and Gantz, they're talking about a Palestine state and two-state solution, and giving all kinds of incentives to Holocaust denial, PA President Abbas, and celebrations going on whenever they murder Jews in these different towns, Jenin, Ramallah, you name it, right across the road from Ma'ale Adumim. I saw these things. And there's the red and white sign. Danger. You walk around in Mamilla Mall, and anyone could go there and eat and mind their own business, whatever, Muslims, anyone.
Right.
And, I can't go, and you can't go into one of those Arab villages and just have a coffee, a cold drink, because we're passing through, just want to take a break or something. You can't do that, because you might get murdered. If we have a proper, well put together, right-wing Jewish government, what kind of changes do you expect, do you hope is going to start happening?
Great question. I can start with the expectations, and then there is the realistic expectations. The expectation of the right-wing camp in Israel is that we will finally have a strong, solid right-wing government of Likud, religious Zionists. And again, some exit polls are saying 16 for the religious Zionist list. Some are saying 13. So we don't know what's going to be anywhere between 13 and 16. I think it's 13, 14, and 16 different polls. If those are the numbers, that's good. But obviously, it only really is good if there is a right-wing government of at least 61. If we are able to put together a right-wing government of at least 61, the expectations are government will take care of the illegal building, the illegal Arab building in Area C, stopping it, destroying most, if not halavai, all of it, but at least some of it, even though they'll have real problems from the Biden administration and the European Union if to do so, that they will enforce greater law and order against the nationalistically criminal Arab Bedouin community in the south, in the Negev, and in the north, in the Galil, that there will be many more building permits for Jews to build in our Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria. And what was the last thing I was going to say? And changes to the justice system. Those are the four critical pieces of legislature, of changes from the government that will be expected from a right-wing government, and touching upon the changes to the judicial system. And again, I want to phrase this properly. It is strengthening Israel's democracy by rebalancing the checks and balances between the three separate powers of governance: the judicial, the executive, and the legislative. Because right now the judicial system has all the power over everything else. It overpowers everything else, and that weakens our democracy because there are no checks and balances. So anyone who erroneously says, "Oh, the right wing, they want to destroy Israel's democracy," no, the changes to the justice system are necessary in order to realign the checks and balances to balance the power to strengthen Israel's democracy. That is what the expectations are if Israel would have a strong, full right-wing government of 61 or 61 plus. However, what might happen, depending upon the numbers, is either there are not enough numbers within the right-wing camp to be 61. Again, even though the polls right now are saying 61, 62, this is just the first exit polls. If it's anywhere 60 or below, and somehow, for whatever reason, Likud is part of that government, but yet you have whether Lapid or Gantz part of that government as well, forget about it. We're not going to see any of those changes. And it's basically going to be having the Likud or whatever right-wing fig leaf parties are part of that left government is basically doing damage control and stopping the left from doing more damage than they would be if it would be a total left-wing government. Because again, if it would be a 61 or 61 plus left-wing government without any representation of the right-wing parties, then we're looking at a free-for-all of appeasement. I don't even want to go to how bad that could get into if that would actually turn into fruition.
You mentioned briefly about the European Union, the pressure on Israel. I'm just wondering, with Israel's discovery of gas, and Israel is going to be a major supplier to the European Union, with a right-wing government, God willing, right-wing Jewish government, God willing, will Israel finally be able to tell Europe that's going to be dependent on Israel for gas? Will a government in Israel be able to tell Europe, do you want our gas or you want the BDS? What is it? That we're in a position to.
The smartest real politician we have to be a prime minister and get as close as possible to having those negotiation skills is Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He's the only one, and I don't think he will go that far. He might hint to that in some ways, but he will use his diplomatic finesse as an experienced leader on the geopolitical sphere in order to achieve an upper hand for Israel. So yes, that is the only way with Benjamin Netanyahu as prime minister, where Israel will be positioned to realign itself with Europe. People have to understand, under this Lapid Bennett and now Lapid left-wing government, Israel has turned into an appeaser vis-a-vis Europe and the EU. What part of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's brilliance when he was prime minister, he knew how to strengthen the relations within Eastern European countries who are also looking for an alliance with Israel to be able to stand up for their national interests, as opposed to the Western European countries who sold their souls to globalism and basically the destruction of their national identities. Whereas Lapid, and I don't know as much as Bennett, but definitely Lapid as foreign minister and now continuing as prime minister, he is basically totally towing the line to appease the progressive Western European nations and diplomacy. And he has thrown our Eastern European allies, who are so critical to us, especially at the United Nations, to support us for votes. And he threw them under the bus, creating issue after issue, and diplomatic issue after diplomatic issue, and basically killing the potentially good relationships to help Israel in the international arena to buffer the danger of the progressive globalist agenda of the Western European countries in the EU and in the United Nations. So the only way Israel will be able to reclaim our diplomatic strength and be able to use gas as a pawn on the chess game of geopolitics is if we have a right-wing government and Netanyahu is the prime minister.
Absolutely. Well put. Alan, go ahead.
So Avi, as you know, I have been a Bibi lover since the 80s when I was in college, and he was ambassador to the U.S., to the UN. He was great. But as we both know, sadly, you know, politicians are what they are, and they can't always keep their word. Is it fair to say that with the partnership of Ben-Gvir, that he's not going to, that Itamar Ben-Gvir will not be there to be Bibi's boy, but kind of be almost keep him honest? In other words, he's almost doing Bibi a favor by pulling him to the right and forcing him to the right, where he won't be able to do some of the things he's done in the past, where one could say, well, Bibi's just being diplomatic. He's trying to balance Israel and the West. With Ben-Gvir, it almost as if he's going to pull him to the right, but he'll be doing Bibi a favor, even if Bibi doesn't recognize it. Is that a fair assessment? And is that, say, the reason why Ben-Gvir is getting so many right-wing votes instead of going to Likud? They're doing it because we want Bibi, but we want Bibi to be the right kind of Bibi.
Yeah, 100%. And I will answer your question by in a different way, actually, from a different angle. Let's put it to you this way. Itamar Ben-Gvir was the excitement of this election because he electrified the public atmosphere and the public square. Finally, a political leader saying exactly what needs to be said about our true enemies and about what needs to be done to deal with our true enemies, that it's not just Arabs in Judea and Samaria and Gaza who are the problem, but plenty of Israeli Arab Muslims are part of the terror threat and support the destruction of the state of Israel. And the pogroms during the Gaza conflict in May 2021 was a wake-up call for many Israelis. And therefore, if Ben-Gvir is in a right-wing government, which I hope does come to be established, he would only be re-elected for the next election if he comes through for all of these new voters who voted for him, based on him being the strong man standing up and realizing we have to have law and order in the South, we have to have law and order in the North, we have to change the laws and the rules of conflict so that IDF soldiers are protected and when they take action in split seconds in order to stop terrorists, and not be afraid of being court-martialed because they're going to get lynched by the media because it doesn't look good what they did. He is only going to be reelected if he stands up for those, I wouldn't say promises, but for those policies to strengthen Israel in the face of the true threats we stand up against. And in that, if he would accomplish that, then yes, he would be accomplishing exactly what you're explaining, basically making people stand up and do what would be necessary. and hopefully then solidifying himself as continuing to be strong in upcoming elections as well, to provide that voice and implementation of policy.
Avi, it looks like Shas has definitely improved. They're showing 10 seats.
Yes,
That's significant.
The word that is being spread around that I'm looking at it while I'm talking to you also is Shas saved the day for the right wing if they do get 61 seats, because they grew by I don't know whether 2 or 3 seats according to the exit polls
There's
right now.
there's a demographic that has been, I think, ignored, and I see it really on the rise. The religious demographic, they have more kids. They're rising in Israel. And I mean, combined right now with religious Zionism and Shas and Torah Judaism Party, they're looking at something like 30, maybe more seats for them. That's not to mention also there's religious Jews in other parties as well, in Good and
Correct.
other parties. So
Very
I
important.
mean, the emergence of Jews who have values in Israel, it's about time. How do you see this, and how do you see it projecting moving forward? Because that demographic, they have more kids, and the youth, they have experienced the fruits of Oslo, the Gaza disengagement, everything. They have been brought up, they have seen it vividly, what happens when you give into terror, you give up land, and they're decidedly, definitely on the right. That's the evidence that's there.
So a fabulous question. Let me answer this from a few different angles. Angle number one, actually, if you look at consecutive elections in Israel, the ultra-Orthodox parties, Shas and UTJ, they're usually always around 6, 7, 8, right? Election after election, which in a sense goes against the logic you were just speaking about, because
Exactly.
since that is a population that is always having kids and always growing, those parties should always be growing from election to election, but they haven't. Like the fact that you just brought up that Shas right now got 10 seats, that is an anomaly, and that's not even though it should be the natural trajectory from election to election, it hasn't happened. So that's the anomaly.
Right.
So that's perspective number one, meaning it's not something so excited to get to happen, because obviously something's happening in those communities, within those voters, that they, even though their numbers grow as a community, or are their numbers growing as big as we think, or are members leaving the community, or are they voting for other parties because it's not growing as large or as by leaps and bounds as it should be, according to the growth of what the growth of the ultra-Orthodox community should be. That's perspective number one. Perspective number two is the real fear on the left wing, whether the moderate left or whether the anti-Jewish state of Israel left. A very real fear that one day the religious, including or especially the smaller, a voice, and that's why they're always scream with every election, especially election, more than ever before. The amount of ads going out there that were fear campaigns that, oh my God, if the religious get in, then abortion is going to be forbidden. Never did you see abortion raised as an election issue in Israel before, until now. And again, that's symbolic of left is using the fear of the growing religious population. So and that's why when the left does get into power, they try to make whatever dangerous changes, policy changes as possible to try to weaken as much as possible the Jewish aspect of the state of Israel, and harm the ultra-Orthodox and religious communities, in a sense, looking for the future. But as a whole, and you also touched upon this as well, if every single religious person in Israel would vote for one of the religious parties, I'm sure it would be between 40 to 50 seats. And the thing is that besides the ultra-Orthodox, in the national religious sector, there isn't this hegemony of voting for the same party. And our votes go all over the place, all the way from left to right, center, etc. And our power as a demographic does not come to fruition totally. And then the question is, how that power really be really come to fruition and to be able to maximize it. But we're never going to know because our community, the national religious community, is never going to be like that. It's not monolithic like the ultra orthodox that everyone's going to go vote for the national religious party. But again, the trajectory is clear. The bigger populations in Israel are the religious populations, even though, and this is very important, the miracle of the Western world is that Israel is the only country that is associated with the Western world that has a positive growth rate, because even non-religious families in Israel on average have 3 or 4 children, which is unheard of in the Western world. Not America, not Canada, not Britain, not France, not Spain, not Australia. That's all like 1.2 kids and a dog. That's not exact, but that's tongue-in-cheek. That's what it is. Israel, you're talking about Jewish population and including the non-religious sector, whether traditional or secular. Thank God we have a strong Jewish value of family and of having children, even with the non-Orthodox families in Israel. So on the one hand, the Orthodox religious families do have more kids on a whole, but thank God, even the non-Orthodox, traditional, and even secular, whatever the spectrum there, plenty of them are having children as well.
100%. So you mentioned that the left-wing media is always going against the religious Jews, the Orthodox in Israel, minimizing us, defaming us. And Israel is supposed to be a Jewish state, an example for Jews all over the world, and a proud Jewish state. There was a report that just came out about Yair Lapid that in the report, and they're denying it now, that his wife is part of the missionary
Messianic
movement to convert Jews to Christianity. And it comes out that her sister and her sister's husband are devout missionaries doing exactly that.
Right.
Tovia Singer came out with a video to espouse on it, even more, give more information. And it's very shaky. They're trying to deny it, and also they're deleting from the internet comments
His
that were
website.
made,
Yeah, things have been deleted from our
or
website.
like that. But here's the thing. We want Israel to be a proud Jewish state, and at the top of leadership, heading the Yesh Atid, the most important, a very important party in Israel that represents a very significant amount of Jews in Israel, that he's dodging the question and he's ducking. But we might as well, guys, keep it down. We might as well target Netanyahu, target the religious community as much as possible. Where is the classic case of hypocrisy of the media?
Are you asking me about Yair Lapid, or are you asking me about the media?
Well, both.
Okay. All right. Let's start with the more important issue, and that's Yair Lapid. First of all, yes, you put the facts out there. From what I understand, it is factually verified that Lihi Lapid's sister and brother-in-law are within the missionary movement, Jews, whatever it is. Big problem. Big problem. Not only that, the news was a few months ago that even though it was cronyism and therefore illegal, Lihi Lapid's sister, who is the prime minister's sister-in-law, was appointed to a senior position in the Jewish National Fund, which here you're talking about a politician who complains about corruption of Bibi Netanyahu, and here he was involved in the most major corruption you can, which is political appointees of your family members. And the fact, one, that it's a family member, two, that she's a missionary, to be appointed the Jewish National Fund, huge problem. Yep. It's not verified about the Prime Minister Yair Lapid's wife. Don't know that, so I'm not going to go on record saying that she is. The fact that her sister is, you can understand why the worry. But here's the thing. The issue of Yair Lapid being Prime Minister should worry us regardless whether his wife is involved with Messianic Jewry or not. He himself is a total ignoramus when it comes to the Jewish identity and the Jewish people. A total ignoramus. I'll give 2 examples right now. A number of years ago, he made a video. This is on video. You want it? It's in Hebrew. I could send you the copy. He's basically talking about the most important Jewish personalities that form the Jewish people, right? And he says Moses and Jesus, and like I think he names like 1 or 2 other Jews. No, that is a red flag. Again,
Right.
for even putting aside the messianic jury potentially of his wife, the fact that a leader of Israel is mentioning Jesus as one of the leading figures of Jewish history to make the Jewish people. Now, I'm not denying Jesus was a Jew and he influenced the world by being the inspiration for Christianity. All right, so he influenced the world, but he did not influence Jewish people. If anything, his existence brought about much suffering and death to the Jewish people because of all the Jews killed in the name of Christians who blamed us for his death. But for a leader to speak about him as if he is one of the leaders of the Jewish people who made the Jewish people, we have a major problem. That's on the theological level. But on the practical level, just 2 weeks ago, I did a video on this on my Pulse of Israel program. He publicly made a video, or it was at a conference, and he said this publicly, that he blamed religious Zionist leader Bezalel Smotrich, Simcha Rothman, MK Simcha Rothman of the Religious Zionist Party, by him blowing a shofar at the eastern wall of the Temple Mount. He did that to instigate Arab-Muslim violence so that you would use violence and cause havoc and injure people. Here we have the prime minister, this is just 2 weeks ago, who has a worldview, who is blaming Jews acting like Jews in our homeland, which should be the most natural thing and the natural right of a Jew to do, blaming our actions as Jews in our ancestral homeland as a provocation, incitement, and done on purpose in order to incite terror. He's blaming the Jews. This man is not fit to be the leader of any party. This man is not fit to be in parliament. So the fact that his wife may or may not be a Messianic Jew, to me, that is less problematic than the fact that he is a total ignoramus about the Jewish people, about Jewish history. He doesn't have to be religious. But at least we need like a Menachem Begin or a David Ben Gurion or anyone else that at least, regardless of religious level, has an understanding and appreciation of Jewish history, of Jewish identity. Yair Lapid's Jewish identity is similar to a majority of American Jewish identity. The Holocaust.
Right.
That's not a Jewish identity. That is a horrible event that murdered and extinguished and it got rid of 6 million plus Jews. But that's one event in thousands of years of Jewish history that made us who we are as a Jewish people. But because he is his father was Tommy Lapid, a Holocaust survivor, and because he has no Jewish identity whatsoever and very little actual Jewish learning or appreciation, his identity is based on anti-Semitism and the Holocaust. That's not a Jewish identity, and that is not a person that we can have as a leader of a Jewish party or of the Jewish people as Prime Minister of the State of Israel to protect us, because his whole understanding of our historical being as a people and our right to our homelands and how we're going to survive here is totally skewed and wrong, and it's going to lead to decisions, which has already made plenty of wrong decisions. So that has to do with that issue. In terms of the media, again, the media is the attack dog of the left. They will do whatever they can to cover up whatever potential problems and issues that would stop voters from voting for the left, and they will put all their focus on attacking the right in order to scare the public, which they do successfully, to not vote for the right parties, even scaring, as I know personally, right wing to not vote for right wing parties because they're believing the attacks from the leftist media.
Absolutely. Polls are coming in still. They're saying 62 for the latest is 62. for a Likud-led coalition on the
Listen,
right.
I want to, Mayor, if you allow me, I'm going to take a step back for a second. Because again, I'm going to follow up and say, we're not going to know the official numbers for the next day
I
or
know.
two. Okay? But regardless, I want to give everyone the following message. And this is an important message that I give over to my children. Regardless if we're happy or we're devastated, we have to remember God is running the show. He is in
Absolutely.
charge. Not to lose faith. I made Aliyah back in 1990. I took part in the 1990 elections when put in power, and then he started going against all of his election campaign promises, and he started talking to the Syrians about giving away the Golan, and he started having the secret talks of Oslo and whitewashing the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the worst terror organization that has the most Jewish blood on, whitewashed them to be a political a peace partner, the Oslo Peace Accords that I was protesting against back then in the streets of Israel, that it would bring more war and bloodshed. Those were horrible times, all right? And those of us old enough to remember those times, we know what devastation means. We know how bad, damaging government the left can be when they get into power and take power. With it all, no matter the devastation of even if the left comes to power, do not lose your faith. We are the
Right.
Jewish people. We are around because God looks after us through the ups and downs. Do not lose faith. Strengthen your faith. He's waiting for us to understand who we are, why we're in our homeland, and want to do it for the right reasons. And when we wake up as a people and deserve the proper leadership and the proper government, that time will come. So I hope, obviously, we have a 61 plus right-wing government as soon as the numbers are finalized. But again, I just want to, such an important information, not lose sleep, do not be depressed, but do not have too many mental issues because of this or too depressed. Hold on to your faith and always remember, God above is running the show. We have to do, as we say in Hebrew, our ishtadlut. We have to do our part. We are partners with him. He's going to do for us. We have to stand up and do for ourselves. We have to go vote. We have to stand up and be vocal about our values and educate people against the lies of the establishment media and strengthen our children and invest in instilling the correct values in our children so they're not brainwashed by the progressive media all around them. We have to do our part, and God will do his part. So do not lose faith. Strengthen your faith.
Absolutely. Alan, go ahead.
Avi, during the Trump administration, I remember seeing billboards in Israel, Bibi and Trump, they're the major bromance. And Bibi used that, to tell the electorate, vote for me because I've got a great relationship with the president of the United States. In this past election, how much of a role did the relationship with the U.S. play? And did Lapid ever try to tell the electorate that Bibi and Biden are not going to get along? It will only harm us. It'll endanger us. Did it play any type of factor at all in these elections?
I have a short answer and a longer answer. The short answer is no, not at all. There was no focus whatsoever on that. I wouldn't say no focus, very, very little focus. Very little focus on any issues. Very little focus on any policies. Like my biggest struggle was trying to put policies in front of my fellow right-wing voters, whether friends, whether neighbors, whether acquaintances, whether social media and the reach that I have, to allow right-wingers to understand the policy differences so that not to be brainwashed by the media to vote for Gantz or Lapid, and to put in front of them, these are the policies they're going to implement if you vote for them, against your own interest and endangering all of Israel as well as your own communities. That's how hard it was. There was no discussion virtually on issues on policy. One might say that Yair Lapid, Prime Minister Yair Lapid, did try to enhance his stature in the Israeli public by pushing forward photo ops of him on this horrendous deal with basically Hezbollah, the maritime sea border agreement with Lebanon. That's really Hezbollah, and it's not even with Lebanon Hezbollah. It's with the United States, and then the United States made a deal with Lebanon Hezbollah. Horrible deal, giving away our sovereign rights in the sea that could also harm sovereign rights on land in the future. So you could say he used that to bump up his stature as an experienced diplomat, prime minister of Israel, making deals on the world stage. Just today, news came out that they're finalizing a deal with the Palestinian Authority about gas in the waters off of Gaza. Another horrible deal that he's trying to use in order to prop himself up as a statesman. But again, it's following the appeasement line. He doesn't know how to stand up for Israel's interests. Total appeasement. He just wants to appease the progressive Biden administration. He wants to appease the Europeans. He wants to appease the United Nations. Not about standing up for Israel. He's weakening. If it's poker, he's putting the cards in front of the world, saying, "These are our cards. Now let's play." Right? Total appeasement. Not holding any cards against for negotiations, to be able to hold out and stand up for Israel's interests. So it's very unfortunate that for good or for bad, the issue of statesmanship or relationship with the United States didn't really come to play. Again, a tiny bit. I just explained how Yair Lapid did it. I think there was like one campaign video that went out by the Netanyahu campaign, the Likud campaign, basically saying, look at the deals Yair Lapid's making. You know, I'm the only one who could stand up for Israel's interests. But again, that was on a very low flame. So the answer basically is no.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yep.
Mayor?
Yes.
Okay, so you can answer my other question then. As you know, members of the Biden administration had threatened Bibi about bringing in Ben-Gvir into his coalition. So forget about, you answered about whether Lapid used it or not, but did the Israeli left-wing media highlight that, warning Israelis, whether you like Bibi or not, or Lapid or not, the U.S. has already warned us about getting into bed with the right wing, and use that to help prop up Lapid?
Oh, 100%. It was blasted across the Israeli media and the English media in Israel, the Jerusalem Post, the Times of Israel, again, the attack dogs of the left in the Jewish Israeli press. Yeah, I don't think it made an impact on voting. If anything, it only strengthened. I mean, here we're an Am Kshei Oref, we're stiff-necked people. Anyone who was thinking of voting Ben-Gvir, they're not going to not vote because of this threat from the Biden administration. If anything, it pushed more people to vote, saying, "Oh, good, then we want him in the government because the Biden administration is afraid of them being in the government." The question really is, again, if there are 61 plus votes in the right-wing camp, with the possibility of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu making a full, strong, right-wing religious government, will Netanyahu buckle to the pressure of the Biden administration and not include the religious Zionist party with Smotrich and Ben-Gvir? Now, there are two issues there. Issue number one is, would it even be possible for Netanyahu to do it mathematically?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Right? Because even if Gantz would agree to such a thing, well, even with Gantz replacing the religious Zionist party, they have less than 61, then that's an impossibility. So that's number one, and then number two is, even if it would be a possibility, would Gantz agree to it? Lapid basically has said no. Gantz has been wishy-washy because there's going to be tremendous pressure from him from the left not to. So it could be that the left will save us. Like a scenario I can envision is that the Biden administration will pressure Bibi Netanyahu. Bibi Netanyahu will do everything to try to bring Lapid and or Gantz into a government in order to placate the Biden administration. And then it's because of Lapid and Gantz digging in their heels in order not to betray their promises or their voters about never sitting with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu again in the government, that it would be because of that Bibi would be forced, in a sense, to have a right-wing government with Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich. That is a possibility as well. So that's why even if there is the possibility of a strong right-wing religious government, I'm not catching my chickens before they hatch. because there's going to be tremendous pressure upon Bibi and Lapid and Argan to join Bibi in order to ensure that Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich are not part of the government, or at least that Itamar Ben-Gvir is not part of the government. They might want to split Ben-Gvir and Smotrich to ensure that Ben-Gvir is out of the government. So we're not going to know anything. Hopefully we'll go to sleep happy with the numbers. Hopefully we'll wake up happy with the numbers. Hopefully the final numbers we'll be happy with. But even then, we have no clue what the outcome of what kind of government we're going to end up having because of whatever pressure or whatever Bibi is going to try to finagle the government he makes if he's able to make a government.
Arab Party. One Arab Party is showing 0. Balad.
Yes, Balad. As of right now, Balad.
That's significant.
Balad and Bayit Yehudi are two parties that are showing 0 according to the exit polls. No clue if that's going to change. We have to remember, in the last election a year and a half ago, Ram was below the threshold, was 0 for most of the night. It was only like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning that it passed the threshold, and then they became the kingmaker.
Right.
So again, we can't trust election polls now, and who knows what we're going to know in the morning.
Let's pause for just a moment. Let's just see what's going on at the Utzmut Yehudit headquarters right now. It looks like a lot of celebrations going on. I like it.
Yeah, this is huge.
Yeah. Very good. Very nice. Very nice watching Living It Up right now because they've been working extremely hard. There's good people that I'm in touch with that we all know who they are. They're great people. MJ, she's very involved with bringing Jews up to the Temple Mount, and Yishai Fleischer, he's always been involved in a big way, working for the campaign. A lot of great people. Avi, I think your son is involved in the campaign as well. I remember he made some video for the campaign before. It's great people who are assisting Ben-Gvir and working hard day and night. And we're watching the polls right now, the projections right now. It's very positive what we're hearing. That's great. Nice to see.
Typically, would the candidates come out and speak this early, or should we wait that they're going to come out and speak tomorrow?
Usually,
I don't know. I mean, I read a report that. Go ahead.
No, usually candidates come out like 12, 12:30, 1 o'clock when there's more of a finality to the exit polls.
Right.
What was Ben-Gvir's campaign pledge when he ran? Was it, vote for me because I will do X, Y, and Z, or vote for me because I will work with Bibi, but I'll make sure that things go the way we said? Because, like we said earlier, it's a coalition, so he's not really running against Bibi. The best he could hope for is make us strong so that we become relevant within one of the larger parties.
First of all, it's interesting. He didn't even have to say any of that. He just focused on his policies. And I interviewed him, and he's told me the policies straight out. Policy number 1, be able to defend IDF soldiers, so they feel that they're able to take action without the fear of being court-martialed. Number 2, making the necessary changes to the judicial system in order to strengthen Israel's democracy. Number 3, to strengthen the law and order in the law, specifically the north and south, but all of Israel, against the nationalistic criminal Arab sector. Those were the 3 major policy promises he was running on that was getting everyone excited about him, because he called out the problem. He called out that Israeli Arab sector is a fifth column that many Israelis have woken up to understand. I mean, you have to understand, Benny Gantz and the Blue and White Party were in a tizzy because just a few days ago, polling was telling them that many of their young voters were deciding between were deciding between voting for Benny Gantz or for Itamar Ben-Gvir. You understand the implication? You're talking about potential left-wing voters deciding to vote, potentially voting for Itamar Ben-Gvir. So they were going crazy when they got that polling information. But that just shows you that the issue of the potential fifth column of Arab Israeli citizens is an issue that many Israelis are waking up to, not just on the right, but also on the center left. So those were the policies he was running on, and it was clear that he would be part of a Likud Benjamin Netanyahu government. No left party would have him as part of a government. So it was clear that you're voting for me in order that I have more power to be able to make a difference in the government. And again, the bigger results he was getting in the polling towards the last few days, he was saying, listen, if I'm part of the government, I want to be Minister of Interior. Sorry, not Minister of Interior Security, meaning in charge of the police, because he wants to have responsibility for making the changes necessary so that Israelis can feel safer.
Absolutely.
You know, one thing I noticed also, and the media does this here or in Israel, if they can find a cop who abuses power, even if it's just about isolating a shot, they will pounce on it. And I want to know, based on what you're saying, is if the media and the European left-wing NGOs now would be even more vigilant in monitoring police action in Israel, especially if it's under Gvir's portfolio.
That's a very good point. I'm sure let's put it this way, if he would be Minister of Interior Security, or even if he wouldn't be Minister of Interior Security, there will be daily write-ups about police activity, 100%. They're going to make everything to be a scandal and to make it look as if we're a racist country and that we're an apartheid country and different set of laws for enforcing the law against the Arab population, even though it's going to be 100% lies and smears and misinformation and stories out of context without giving the readers and viewers the full story of why the police acted against criminals the way they did. So yeah, 100%. That's probably what we're gonna experience.
Listen, we've been going on for a while. We don't have final results yet. Avi, I want to thank you for being with us, and we'll have you on in future times. And hopefully, I'll be on your when I'm there in Israel. That'll be great.
It would be a pleasure.
But it's so far it's great news we're hearing. I hope it's going to end up being great news. That it will be a I don't even really like the term right wing. It's just a Jewish government that's going to reflect proper Jewish values and make sure that Israel remains a strong, proud Jewish state. That little tiny Jewish state in the world. Everybody's upset with us. The BDS, we're not real Jews. Kanye West is real. It's the absurdities that go on. But we have to keep the faith and we have to speak the truth. And that's it's nice to see a momentum going on right now of Jewish pride, and that's not going to go away anywhere. That's the future.
No, 100%, and that's exactly what the left is afraid of, like we discussed earlier.
Right.
So, and Meir, thank you so much for having me on the program. It's been wonderful being able to be here together with you and with my friend Alan. I appreciate having me, and I can't emphasize enough, everyone listening, be proud Jews and strengthen your faith in the one above. He's running the show, and just every day question yourself, what can I do to further strengthen my own Jewish identity, the Jewish identity of all those around me, bring everyone home to Israel as soon as possible, right? We're supposed to be here in the land of Israel, not in order to run away from anti-Semitism, but in order to be part of bringing the Geula, bringing the redemption. That is our purpose in having this Jewish state. So come on home and help be part of this miraculous project.
Absolutely.
And each and every day, regardless of the politics, regardless of disappointments in politicians, regardless of excitement in politicians, the future is up to us, you and me, the little Jews. But it's all based on our Jewish identity and holding on to God and working together with Him.
Absolutely. Well put. Thank you very much, Avi.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Mayor, you get the best.
Well, we're going to be
guess.
wrapping. I believe that Dr. B has. What's that?
You get the best guests.
What's that? I didn't hear you.
You get the best guests.
Hey, fabulous. I mean, I don't know where Mordechai KEDAR went, but you know, it was a pretty loaded, full show, and it's going to continue with this excitement. I like the video that we're seeing live at Yehudit headquarters right now. We see a lot of people there, a lot of people in a very good mood. And again, the projections are they're wild. I mean, anywhere from 13 seats to 16 seats were Otzma Yehudit. And projections are also saying it's going to be a right-wing coalition government led by Netanyahu. It's about time. It's about time.
And you know, Mayor, what I like about this
People
also, because
celebrating.
they say everything is Mina Shemayim. You look at right now, the next 2 years
Yes.
of the Biden administration, he's weak. And
Yep.
There couldn't be a better time for an Israeli government of this makeup than to have someone like Biden in who can't do a darn thing about it because he's got nothing.
Right.
He
Right.
won't have
Exactly.
either house. He has no power and nothing he's able to do about it. So timing is perfect, they say, and everything.
Well, consider too, Alan, in terms of timing, that nobody would predict that there's going to be a Ukraine-Russian war going on, and then there's sabotage of the Nord Stream pipeline, and the timing is perfect for Israel. All of a sudden, Israel's going to be the gas supplier for
Europe.
Nobody. We're in a different era.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I think our Dr. Video wants to conclude with something. He had something he wanted to share.
Let's see, where am I? There. Hey, it's just mentioned something about, somebody mentioned something about how people think we're a racist government or apartheid government, that sort of thing. So I just got a couple of pictures I thought I'd show just kind of to fill the space a little bit. And then, Mayor, when we're done, I'll keep this going. So if something does change, something comes in, or do you want me to shut it down and open it up later? You tell me, because we still do have always between
No, we
around
might
20
as well
people.
shut it down because we're not going to have anything for probably tomorrow morning or the next day. Anything concrete.
Okay, if anything changes, call me, and I'll go and make a flash and make it live, okay? Meanwhile, just
Perfect.
speaking about apartheid. A quick little presentation, once again, from MEIR, Israel Now and Never Again. This is my video on apartheid in Israel. Apartheid 101. I don't think he thinks there's apartheid in Israel. I don't think she and her mother congratulating her to finish her IDF training thinks there's apartheid, nor do I think this guy is really concerned about apartheid. Of course, this group of people, they're having trouble really getting along together. There's Israeli Jews, Christians, Muslim Jews, and Bedouins in the same pictures. And don't forget, of course, the female members and of past Israel, Miss Israel. So here's the Middle East. There's Israel, okay? Just to compare it. And here's the Middle East, not Israel. As we've said before at the beginning of the show, we'll always say it again, the world is a dangerous place, not because of those who do evil, but because of those who look on and do nothing. And that's not what we do at Israel Now. So join us, go to israelnow.ca, join us, support us, go to our website, israelnow.ca, our Facebook page, our YouTube page, our Israel Now is another Facebook page. Please find us, support us, and because only together can we fight anti-Semitism. Meir, back to you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much to everyone who joined us. Going to ask everyone if you could please share the link on your social media platforms. We'll reach a lot more people, be more effective. We'll have future shows as well. And obviously, when I return to Israel, we're going to be doing the show from Israel. And we'll have amazing guests like we always have on, and great topics that we have to discuss, important topics affecting our people and the state of Israel. I want to thank everybody for joining us. I just see someone who just posted in the chat. He said, "Free Palestine." Yeah, in your wildest dreams, Israel is here to stay, and there's over 7 million Jews living in Israel. The BDS.
No, I think what he means is that Palestine is now free.
I know of.
It's a fire sale. So when Free Palestine is like, free, buy one, get one free. So Free Palestine means that right now, if you want to buy Palestine, you can buy it for $24, kind of like the Stuyvesant deal with Manhattan Island.
Right. And you know that
Okay.
Ramallah is the capital of Palestine. You know that, right? Ramallah and Jenin are the capitals of Palestine. There you go.
Yes, under the memory of King Arafat, whose $20 billion went to his blonde wife in France. And he certainly wasn't big on BDS, since he had bowling alleys he owned from Long Island to California. And the biggest events at his bowling alleys were bar mitzvahs on Long Island. You could check that. That's a fact.
Interesting. Okay, well, anyways, Alan, Gary, thank you very much. Everyone who was watching, thank you very much. And L'chaim, Israel is a Jewish state, and Jerusalem's the capital of Israel forever and ever. And the Jewish people have returned to Israel. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. And when we wake up tomorrow morning, may there be a Jewish government strong in Israel established that will finally implement proper Jewish law and deterrence against those who wish to do harm to the Jewish state. Thank you very much.
Great day. Thank you.
Now, just a word from our sponsor closing, so you stay tuned for us. Next time, we're going to bring you next week for Lifestyles of the Rich and Heartless Palestinian Style. And my last commentary for the day is the concealed carry toilet bag. Coming soon to J.Ca shop near you.
Excellent.
And let's play Hatikva to close it down. Right before Hatikva, let's remember BDS. Let's all support BDS. Buy Israeli products, donate to Israeli charities, support the state of Israel. And here we go.
נפש